I'm here with Eivør. She's touring right now across North America, playing in Toronto today. We're getting to the tail end of the tour. So first of all, I want to welcome you to this frigid land of the north that we call Canada. How's things going?
It's going great. We are having a great tour, and it's wonderful to be back in Canada, for sure.
I was going to say you brought the cold weather with you, but you didn't. The cold weather was here already. It's been freezing in the city of Toronto. I know you're going to warm up everybody today, but tell me a little bit about how the tour has been. How has this tour been for you when you compare it to previous tours when you've came to North America?
It's been great. It's been wonderful to kind of meet, all my followers here in North America, and to be able to share my music with people is just such a gift. And I've just enjoyed every show so much, so I'm very grateful.
You are from the Faroe Islands, but you also lived in Reykjavik, so you have this experience of being in two different countries. They have a lot of similarities, but they have their own uniquenesses. How did those two countries shaped the way you view music and the way you view that vision that you have and transform it in your own art?
I mean, I've always believed that, wherever you come from is some kind of your inner landscape, and it shapes who you are, and especially if you're an artist, it shapes the way you hear sounds and the way you write music or paint or whatever you do. Your surroundings are such a big part of your identity. And I think for me, I grew up in the Faroe Islands, which is a very tiny place. Population of 50,000 people in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. And then when I was 17, I moved to Reykjavik, to Iceland, to study classical singing. And coming to Iceland was like coming home for me. Iceland is so similar to the Faroe Islands, but at the same time, it also felt like it was just a bigger city, Reykjavik, than I was used to. So it was like coming home in many ways, but at the same time, it was very new and exciting to me. So I've always seen Iceland as my second home.
I was going to ask you, do you see yourself as a child born of two different mothers?
In a way, because every time I come to Iceland, I'm like, oh, it's like coming home. And the same way I feel when I come to the Faroe Islands. So it's very similar places.
You have such a diverse discography. Normally, when you look at a specific record, that record tends to be always a snapshot of where the artist is at that point in time when they create the album. But with your discography, it really creates a roller coaster ride of emotions and experiences. Are those albums snapshots of where you were when you created them?
Yes, absolutely. And, you might think I'm quite schizophrenic. But I've always been just extremely curious, I guess, in creation of music, and I've always been had this wanderlust when it comes to creating music, and I've just been very curious about exploring different sides of myself during my whole career, and I've never felt that I had to choose a box, a genre or anything. So I've just felt quite free in exploring all these different things that I've done. And I guess now that I've made 10 albums, I feel I've come to a place where it all kinds of comes together, especially with my new album. I feel like all the things that I've been exploring and been going through these past 25 years has kind of gathered in a way on one album, and that's where I'm at right now.
How is it for you when you're performing these songs throughout your discography? Like you said, these are snapshots. So when you're performing songs from different albums, do different emotions come through? Do you travel back in time to where you were when you created those songs?
Actually, I think that my standing point is always from where I am right now. And that's why my songs tend to change a lot, from album to live performance, because every live performance invites something new to the song, I feel, and that's how I feel my songs, that's how I keep them fresh to me, because I always have to sing them from where I am right now. So that's the beauty of music. It's the moment when it happens that is the magic. You know, you can't. I think you lock yourself too much if you travel back in time, because you have to kind of grow as an artist, and then every time you perform a song, even if it's a very old song of yours, it has a new identity in a way every time.
So speaking of pictures, with the new record that came out in 2024, what kind of picture does that record paint?
What kind of picture? Like I said before, that album for me is very much somehow a homecoming, where like I gather all my journey through music and all these different elements that I have explored a lot, like from both cinematic music to the more folky stuff and to the more rocky and classical. So it has like all these elements that kind of come together on one album, and that's for me the homecoming. That's where I feel that as an artist, I feel like some things just melt together, which has been quite extraordinary for me in the process of creating it.
Speaking of the process of creating, when you were putting the record together, do you tend to follow always the same idea or the same process, or should I say the same? Does every album have the same starting point, or do you take every record as it comes to you?
It's always different. It's never the same, and it always starts from, of course, somewhere. But I'm always very humble about the process of creating an album, because you can't sit down and just say, okay, now I'm going to do this recipe and it's going to be a great album. It has to come from a genuine place and from curiosity and, you know, from the joy of creating. And that's, I think, the trick for every artist to kind of... Oh.
The sirens.
Are they here for us?
No, I don't think they're here for us. I think we're okay. I think we're safe. We're safe.
Yeah, so to kind of to hold on to that kind of spark within yourself, to the joy of creating is something that has always been very important to me, and every album has to come from an honest place within myself, and not just because I have to make another album. You know, it's something that I wanna explore and create every time. And for this particular album, I had some crazy ideas in my head that were quite spaced out and very cinematic sounding vocal lines that I had recorded. And that's kind of where the idea for this album started. And I was like all by myself in a little village in the Faroe Islands when I started writing these first tracks for the album. And it kind of just took off from there.
I was actually just going to ask you that, if you had anybody around you that you trust enough to be a little bit of a soundboard to check, I'm going in this kind of direction, and like, what do you think? But I guess that's not the case. It's all on you.
Well, no, I definitely use my creative collaborators, but it always starts with me alone in a room. But then as I develop the ideas, I like to collaborate with my musician friends or Tröndur, who produced this album with me, who's also my husband. We collaborate a lot on my ideas, and he comes from a more classical background, and I'm more in the rhythmic, electronic, folky background. And when those two worlds meet, I feel that something exciting often happens in the arrangements. But yeah, I think the core ideas always come from me, and then I finish them up with people.
When you're recording the record, this latest album, do you take time to digest the album once everything is over and just maybe sit alone in a room with a glass of wine, a tea, whatever you like, and just really enjoy the album almost from a listener standpoint, not necessarily from the creator standpoint?
Yeah, I think that's very important when you make albums, and to kind of, because when you create it, you're so deep within the bubble of creating it, and it's always quite mind-blowing to me to listen to the album. But I have to have other people in the room to hear it from another perspective. So that's always like a quite interesting moment when you have created the album for months and months, and then you're listening to it, the full thing, with someone who never heard it, and you will hear it from a different point of view. That's always an interesting one.
How important is their opinions about the album when that moment happens? Do you get a little bit upset if they don't have the same opinion as you do?
Well, probably, yeah. But for me, that process is more about me hearing it from a different point of view, because I will hear immediately if something is not right in that moment. So when I listen with people, it's more about them giving me the opportunity to hear the album from another point of view. So,
are you a perfectionist?
Oh, yes. It's horrible.
Do you get into the weeds when you're putting a record together, going over a song multiple times because there's one line, either a vocal line or a musical line, that it's not exactly the way it should sound in your ear? Do you drive everybody around you nuts?
All the time, it is always a struggle to be, in a creative business. You have ideas that you want, and it's such an abstract thing. You have a feeling that you wanna, you want something to feel a certain way, and you won't give up until it feels just right. So, but then it's also, I think, a skill to know when to let it go. But I'm still working on that.
I have one last question for you. I can see that you really enjoy the creative process and putting a record together, but then there's the other side of it. Once the album goes out, you have to play some live shows. So how do you balance those two worlds, the creative side of making the album and then the more the more linear side of just presenting that album then to your audience?
Yeah, I always say that those are two very, very different things, and the creative process has a certain, struggle about it, and a certain where you dive very deep within yourself. It's very often maybe a very introverted process where you really have to dive within yourself and bring out, whatever you have to say. And then the process afterwards, when the album is out and you go out and present it and play live shows, it's totally different. It's completely open and outroverted. So it's almost like two different worlds, and I enjoy both very much. But I always really love live performance. I feel on a stage live with an audience in front of me. That's where it all kind of comes together, and where the music makes the most sense when you can share it with an audience. It's like a conversation, and no concert is the same, and people will interpret the music differently every night, and that's the beauty. That's where I feel most complete.
And if you want to experience that, I'm going to put some tour dates on the description of this video so you can go check it out. Also a link if you want to purchase the latest record. Came out last year in 2024 on Season of Mist. Thank you very much for your time. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to the show tonight.
Thank you. Me too. It's nice to talk to you.
Thank you.